I hope you had a wonderful holiday, if you did get a holiday. I know not everyone got a holiday, like my brother had to work right through. So, I want to move fairly quickly through everything I have to say, but I would, because I would like to do like a Q&A at the end. So if anyone has questions, please post them in the chat, and then I will get to them at the end. And whatever we don't get through, then thanks, Nick, you're amazing. So, whatever we don't get through, then I can maybe chat to you privately or something like that. Okay, so I feel like 2 screens is not enough for this. Okay, so my name is Marinus. A lot of you know me from the Cambridge group. I've been tutoring for 12 years, and I've been tutoring Cambridge for 9 years. I mostly tutor English language, but I occasionally do maths and Afrikaans. I actually started with Afrikaans and then went to maths, and then kind of like got obsessed with tutoring English. I got interested in the Cambridge system when I met my wife, because like she had done Cambridge schooling and she was like really into it, and I was like, I didn't know much about it, and so because I was tutoring at the time, I just like learned more about it and I got really interested in it, and then I got a couple of students and it was great. And then 9 years passed, and yeah, I mostly tutor Cambridge now. I have a specific interest in helping students who are dyslexic or neurodivergent, because it's mostly because like everyone in my life is neurodivergent. And a lot of them spoke about how they struggle with learning at school and stuff, and I believe that learning needs to be easy and we can make it work for people. So whatever subject it is, I feel like we need to make learning work for the student instead of trying to make the student fit into a box. And I feel like Cambridge really allows for that. I have 2 kids. One is 5 and one is 6. I'm homeschooling them. My son is still learning through play mostly. But my daughter, who's 6, has recently decided that she wants every moment of her day on a schedule. So we're trying that out. She's loving it. Me, not so much. But yeah. So, I was first going to speak just about the high school years, but I feel like a lot of people are on the homeschooling, on the British curriculum group, and are not currently doing IGCSEs or A-levels, but I thought I would just say something about the primary school years. So I would say that you definitely need a focus on curiosity. So by focusing on literature, so my favorite thing, I love literature. I think it is a great way to build curiosity. It is a great way to build depth of understanding. It is a great way to build maturity. So I would say definitely focus on curiosity. So find out what your kids are interested in, and find them books on it. Yes, it's good to have like a box curriculum if you're into that, or you could follow the Cambridge textbooks or whatever you choose to do. There are many options, but I would say that the main focus should be just following curiosity. And I think important things to cover is reading nonfiction, writing nonfiction. So I think writing nonfiction is also really important. Like it's a thing that people often leave out. I don't know why it's left out, but a lot of students come to me when they're writing their IGCSEs and they've never done nonfiction writing. reading fiction and writing fiction. Writing fiction usually gets covered in primary school by a lot of parents. Reading fiction also does, but you do get some students who just aren't like big readers. And so I would suggest for them to like do short stories or listen to audiobooks. Just consuming literature builds your vocab, it builds maturity, it's amazing. And you also don't have to do comprehension tests because you can. I mean, some people love it, but it can be kind of boring for some students. So if it is boring for your child, you could maybe discuss the things, write reflective pieces. It doesn't have to be totally formal all the time. Definitely work on your grammar. Oh my gosh, I've got a typo. My wife said, before you start, make sure you have no typos. So definitely focus on grammar. There are some really great grammar workbooks. Make it fun. You can use IXL. There are many things that you could use. Be creative. Don't make it boring, because my biggest struggle as a tutor is that students come to me when they're writing AS or IGCSEs and they hate English because it's been boring their whole life. So try to make it interesting and try to prevent it from being boring. I think that would be, that's a big recommendation. And then definitely building your vocabulary and spelling skills. So, my focus on literature. So, 3 areas that you can focus on literature is short stories, novels, and poetry. So, a focus on literature creates, lets students think critically. And a very big part of Cambridge exams specifically is that it requires critical thinking, especially English. It requires you to have an opinion. It requires you to be able to think about why the writer did specific things. And you need to think about what's going on. Now, most of my students do write the 0500 exam or the 9093 exam. And so that is your language, your English language paper. And even if you're writing your English language paper, I would say definitely before you get to IGCSEs or AS or A-level, you should be focusing on literature. Not only literature, but you should include literature in what you're doing, because it teaches you those skills that you need for analyzing text, for looking at text, for exploring texts. It gives you things to talk about. It gives you things to think about. And it also opens up space for discussion. And I feel, especially when it comes to English, discussion is very important. We need to be discussing things with our kids. We need to be discussing things in a group. I say it later on, but I'll say it now. It might be worth starting co-ops where you study books together. Nick Ferris, he's here. He runs a book club, a virtual book club, and definitely join that. I have told all my students that they need to join that, because literature is the heart of English. Okay, let's look at the high school years. So, I'm starting with year 8 and 9. I know technically year 8 is like grade 7. So, but it depends on your child's aptitude. We also need to be aware of the fact that British schools start at a younger age. So, like, you might... There's no direct comparison. It's just every child is unique in what they're capable of at that age. So just explore what your child is capable of. if they're finding work a little bit easier, just move to more challenging work. So our purpose of year 8 and 9 is we're working towards our IGCSE skills, as we will discuss just now. They might do the work at an easier level, but all the IGCSE recommendations I'm going to make can also be applied to year 8 and 9. So, as stated, literature is great for skills development. So, I said the thing about them if they're not big readers, you can do short stories or poetry. I love doing poetry with my students because, especially when it comes to text analysis, they can look, okay, this word has this effect because it has this connotation. And so they can really explore the meaning of the language. In terms of resources, there are great textbooks for this group that I love using. I like the Cambridge University Press ones, but you can also find a lot of resources on test.co.uk. You can find some resources on Twinkle. I actually really love Twinkle. They've got a section called Beyond English, and it basically is like a full curriculum that you can work through. It's not Cambridge specifically, I think it's like AQA, but it's really great, and I would definitely recommend it. And then I think it's very important to check their work. So they are a bit older here, and you might want to say, you know what, you can do this work on your own. And a lot of students can just get through the work on their own, but I think it is important to provide them with feedback so that they can see, okay, well, here I'm still struggling, here I'm managing. What is Pringle? Where do we see Pringle? Oh, Twinkle. I'll type it in the chat for you. Twinkle. There we go. Okay, so they're a bit older here. Okay, wait, sorry, I got distracted. I'm sorry if I'm a little bit awkward. I've never spoken. Okay, I don't even know how many. Okay, it's only 33 people. But I mean, last time I spoke to this many people, I was in high school, so we need to be developing their critical thinking at this stage and encourage free thought. And in order to do that, we need to have those discussions with them about how they're answering, why they're answering that, and really open a dialogue with them. And I think if this dialogue is opened at this point, then IGCSEs and AS levels and A levels are much easier to get through. So, a side note, if students are still struggling with spelling, reading, and handwriting in year 8 and 9, I think you should definitely consider sending them to an educational psychologist for an assessment. Thanks, Nick. I think do it at this point or an earlier point, so that their confidence is not destroyed by the time they get to IGCSE. We don't want our kids to get to IGCSEs and then they feel like they can't do things. They feel like there's something wrong with them. They feel like they're deficient in some way, because they're not. They might just have a struggle and they might just need extra support. And taking them to an educational psychologist can help to get that support. It can help to get them concessions for their exams. A lot of my students need readers, scribes, a separate room for those with a lot of anxiety. So I think definitely consider that. Yeah. So IGCSEs, I recommend doing the 050 English language paper because it leads nicely into the 9093. The reason I don't suggest a different English exam for your AS, so your 9093 to your AS English language, the reason I don't suggest a different English exam for your AS is because the South African requirements for matric exemption, you need a group A subject, so you need a first language. Now, your first language, English literature, does not count as a first language A-level subject. I think English language and literature, I knew this before right now, but right now I'm blanking. So if anyone can correct me, great. So as far as I can remember, if I do make a mistake, I'll email you all. As far as I can remember, you can do AS language and literature, but then obviously from language and literature, you can't move on to A level. So a lot of people choose to do A levels, or if they are good at English, because I don't usually recommend A levels, but a lot of people do choose A levels if they're good at English, because they want more A level subjects, because they want to basically do less subjects. So yeah, doing the 909-3 exam is open-ended. So in terms of focus, our main focuses of the course are reading comprehension and written communication. So students need to be able to examine explicit and implicit meaning of a variety of texts. So that's a very big component. A lot of students struggle to, they manage with the explicit, but they struggle to look at the implicit, which is like the meaning behind what is being said. It's like the reading between the lines type of meaning. So they also need to be able to summarize text, have a basic understanding of how to analyze the language use in a text, and they need writing skills for a variety of purposes. So they need to be able to write letters, reviews, all kinds of things. And they need to have a good set of vocabulary. So in terms of time, usually it takes 2 years. Usually people take 2 years, but I have done it within 1 year with many, many students. And the recommendation is 130 teaching hours, although I know that different families approach lessons differently. So if you have a tutor, some people have tutors, some people do it solo. So this would apply to how you work as a family and how your child works and what your child's needs are. Thanks, Nick. Okay, so common struggles that I've noticed. So biggest struggle, writer's effect. So we start with a formula. So if they're struggling with a writer's effect question, you can start with a formulaic approach. So you can let them explore from here and give them a lot of practice. So it is important that they be critical thinkers here, and that they develop critical thinking before this point. In terms of vocabulary, I have many students, especially first language students who speak Afrikaans at home. They don't have a lot of access to vocabulary building. So to help with this, before this point, you can have a focus on literature. Oh my gosh, I am obsessed with literature, it seems. I didn't realize this. Okay, maybe I did. If you didn't have a focus on literature before your IGCSEs, while you're doing your IGCSEs, you can, like as an extra side quest, you can work on your vocabulary. You can work on literature. Another thing that I recommend to students who are really struggling with their vocab is studying the Barron's 3,500 SAT words, because, I mean, they don't pick up everything, but they pick up quite a lot of it. And they're good words. When I was at school, I went through the 3,500 SAT words because I don't know why I did that. I didn't need to do that, but I did that. And it was great. So then a third thing that they struggle with is their writing. So generally summaries, I just want to note here that summaries, if they have a bit of practice and they have some instruction on it, they generally my students generally pick up the summaries quite easily. Yeah, so writing is only really an issue when the skill hasn't been actively developed. So, but it's not really a big issue because over the course of going through the IGCSE work, they usually pick this up. They might not be brilliant if they haven't had previous exposure to it much, but they will pick it up. Okay, so I've got a recommended approach to IGCSE. So in terms of reading, so things we can do, we can practice reading a variety of texts. They can practice reading a variety of texts and identifying explicit meanings. So they could look at definitions, facts, and figures. They could pay attention to tone and attitude of the text and consider the author's perspective. This will help understanding implicit meaning. Then they need to analyze and evaluate the information and the text and use supporting evidence from the text to develop their own ideas and opinions. Consider how the writer uses language, structure, and other literary devices to achieve certain effects and influence the reader. Practice finding and selecting information from text for specific purposes, such as writing a report or giving a presentation. So these are just some handy things that you can do. Yeah, in terms of writing, so it's very important that they practice expressing their own experiences, thoughts, and feelings, and imaginings through writing. So I would suggest that I recommend for each of my students to have a journal. And I don't care what goes in that journal, but they must write 3 pages a day. It's actually a practice that I started when I was about 22. I just started writing 3 pages a day, and it helped me develop my communication skills. It helped me with my self-awareness. It helped me with a lot of things. So writing 3 pages a day, like A5 pages, brilliant. And it shouldn't be a chore, it should just be one of those things they do. And then they need to be able to organize their ideas and opinions in a clear and logical way and consider the audience and purpose of the writing. So this is a skill that we're going to build on a lot in both our reading, and they need to be able to understand how other people do this and how they do this. So we expand on this in the 9093 course. They need to be able to expand their they should expand their vocabulary and try using a variety of sentence structures to make their writing more engaging and effective. So just fun writing exercises. When they're writing, they should pay attention to their register, their level of formality, and their writing, and adjust it as appropriate for the context. And I think it's very important at this point to have discussions about it. So, like, let them write something and then ask them, okay, well, what was the register? Why did you choose this level of formality? And if I had to write this for a different audience, how would I have to change this text? And that really gets them thinking about it. They also need to practice using correct spelling, punctuation, and grammar in their writing to improve clarity and precision. So, at some point in the future, exams will probably be online. But, and students will be able to type out their things. I don't know if there's going to be spell check or whatever, but I would definitely say for now, let them practice writing on paper, because when they spend their whole school, like all their school years, typing things out, and then they get to the exam and they need to suddenly write, they don't have that practice in spell checking for themselves. They don't like checking their punctuation, checking their grammar. They haven't trained themselves in actually evaluating their own work. So I would definitely say let them do it on paper. And then, a side note, I would recommend some kind of group setting to work through all of this. So the syllabus was designed for a group setting. So you could get a tutoring group, you could join a co-op. I was thinking it would be great if people on the homeschooling groups on Facebook could perhaps like join up with like 5 or 10 people, and like things can happen online. And maybe one of the parents can host and kind of guide the students through everything, and one parent could do English, one parent could do maths, and like little co-ops are great. And because we have the internet, we don't really need to worry about people being close to us, because I know some people are remote and that limits the community you have access to. Okay, so AS. So this is a 993. It's quite a lot to get through. So I've broken it down into our paper 1, our AS, which is our paper 1, and our paper 2, and then our A level, which is our paper 3 and our paper 4. And then I mentioned how the IGCSE skills that are further developed in 993, and then the new skills we learn in our 993. Okay, so paper 1 reading, a lot of this I got directly from the syllabus. I just wanted to make it very clear what the okay, yes, that's a good idea. I totally agree with that, Zoe. IGCSE success is amazing. So in terms of our requirements, there are skills that we need to build, and they're like English is a skill-based subject. So in order to build these skills, the students need to read widely throughout the program of study, continually deepening their appreciation of an increasingly rich array of reading material. A lot of this should be done on their own. They should be learning at this point to really explore things, really study further. They should be interacting with texts. Reading is a very big part of what we do at AS, and they need to be interacting with news. They need to be interacting with blog posts, all kinds of things, reviews, and practicing. Well, we'll get to the writing them. Well, I can say it now. And practicing writing these things as well. They need to know they need to have an intimate knowledge and understanding of the conventions. Okay, I'll answer that just now. Understanding of the conventions and discourses associated with a diverse range of genres. So you need to be able to understand what the nuances are of each of the genres that we're exploring. Genre, styles, and contexts. So how is it written? Why is it written like that? What context? How does the context influence how the text is written? Why the text is written in that way? How does the writer use language to create an effect, which is building on our IGCSE skills? But going further than that, how does the use of language creates show what the purpose is? And I think I'm stumbling over my words a little bit. How does the way we use language, or the way the writer has used language, portray the purpose, the context, all aspects of the text? And how does style, so each writer has an individual style, how is that style expressed? And what is the way that style is expressed tell us about the way the audience will receive the text? And how does the writer change how they're writing because of who the audience is? I don't know if that made sense. Okay. Learners should continue to cultivate their personal relationship with the reading, enabling them to respond reflectively, analytically, discursively, and creatively, as is appropriate to the task or context. Okay, so that's our paper 1. So our AS paper, our AS papers are our paper 1 and our paper 2, and our A-level papers are our paper 3 and our paper 4. Obviously, if you want an A-level, you have to do all 4 papers. If you want your AS, you have to do the first 2. So using their reading as an inspiration, learners should explore and experiment with a similarly extensive variety of genres, styles, and contexts in their writing. So we've read a lot, and so now we need to write a lot. In addition to refining their ability to express themselves with precision and clarity of purpose, learners should become increasingly reflective writers, capable of adapting the style of their writing to fit a diverse range of forms, audiences, purposes, and contexts. So basically everything we learn in our reading, in our text analysis that we do in paper 1, and we do a bit of, I suppose, our reflective writing is a bit of text analysis. So everything we learn in our text analysis, we apply to our writing so that we can be more effective writers, well, so that students can be more effective writers. Okay, then we've got language analysis. So our paper 3 is our language analysis, and it's made up of 2 sections, so language change and child language acquisition. So language change is basically looking at how language has changed over the years and why those changes have happened, and we take a text and we analyze that text to see how language has changed. We look at different presentations of that text to see how language has changed. So in the language change section, we are also going to learn about how historical language data is presented. So we're going to have the students will learn how to read and understand that historical language data. Then child language acquisition. So here students look at children aged 0 to 8 years. So this is your early stages of development, and we consider the various features and functions of spoken language used during this period. We look at the language theories, the theorists, and the conventions within the field. So this is a very, it's like theory heavy. It was similar to when I was studying psychology. It was similar to that. It's a similar take as a similar way of approaching English as the way that I approached psychology at university. So you are exploring theorists. You're deciding which theory you think fits in the context. Then we've got our paper 4. So our paper 4 is our language topic. So we've got English in the world and language in the self. So English in the world is an exploration of how English is a global phenomenon and how English is used in different countries, and why it is used in different places. We look at varieties of English, and basically the expansion of English. And then language in the self, we look at how language... Okay, so hot take. This is how language interacts with culture, well, society, and identity. So how language shapes identity. So we look at how the degree to which language is innate, learned, or both, and the ways in which language and thought are both interwoven with and separable from each other, and how we use language both consciously and unconsciously to construct and maintain social identities. Okay. So, I'm going to go through the skills and then a recommendation for each of the skills. So, the skills that we are going to be further developing in 909.3. So, analyzing, evaluating, developing facts, ideas, and opinions from text. So, this is practice analyzing. We should practice analyzing and evaluating text by highlighting key points and summarizing main ideas. Practice developing arguments using evidence from the text. So summary isn't really a part of... Oh. Is everyone losing my sound? Okay, my sound's working there. There will be a recording of this if there is something you missed, which will have clear sound. And I will send you a link to the slideshow so you can just look through the slideshow afterwards. So, summarizing isn't a part of our 909.3 exam, but being able to identify key points, being able to identify what the writer is trying to achieve, what the purpose is a very big component of this paper. Of 909.3. Acquiring and applying a wide vocabulary and knowledge of grammatical terminology. So we use a lot of grammatical terminology, and we to build this, we should regularly read challenging texts and try to identify and learn new vocabulary. I actually have a vocabulary list. Yeah, I've got a vocab list for the 909.3 exam, which I can send out to anyone who wants it. Then selecting and using information for specific purposes. So practice identifying the purpose of the text. So this is really important. We need to be able to know whether it's to inform, persuade, or entertain. And we need to be able to select relevant information accordingly. And saying that it's to inform, persuade, and entertain is not going to be enough. We need to understand how language has been used to achieve that purpose. So next we need to the next skill is selecting and using information for specific purposes. So for this, practice outlining the main points of an argument and explaining their significance. Practice commenting on specific ideas by expressing your own opinions and providing evidence to support them. Outlines are really great. I love doing outlines with my students. It lets me see what they think is going on in the text. And it really lets you think about how structure works, which allows you to evaluate structure, but it also allows you to use structure effectively in your own writing. Next up, evaluating the ideas and opinions presented in text. So, to work on this, we can practice identifying and evaluating the strengths and weaknesses of the ideas and opinions presented in a text. Practice presenting counter-arguments and evidence to support your own evaluation. So here I would definitely say this is a good space for having some kind of group setting, because just discourse about what you've written, what you're reading is so valuable. Okay, so new skills that we develop in 909.3. Reflecting upon and evaluating the qualities of... They need to be able to reflect and evaluate the qualities of their own writing. So To practice this, they should practice self-editing and revising their work to improve clarity, coherence, and organization. Seek feedback from peers or a teacher to identify areas for improvement. So often what I do in my lessons is I have students first check their own work, and then I have them swap it with a peer, then the peer reviews their work and leaves comments on the side, and then students will go back and correct what they've done, but in a way that I can still see what they originally had, and then I will take a look at it and see, okay, well, this is where then I will provide some detailed feedback. Expanding knowledge, understanding, and use of language terminology. So to work on this, regularly review and practice language terminology learned in class. Seek out additional resources such as textbooks or online materials to deepen your knowledge. I would, if there are any, if there's terminology or anything like this you're struggling with, or you're not sure what resources to use, the Cambridge website has recommended resources, but I've also got links to a lot of resources, so if you need resources, send me a message and I can link you to things. You tell me what you're struggling with and I can link you to things that might help with that. Then analyzing written text and interpreting language data. So practice analyzing written text by identifying patterns and trends in language usage. Practice interpreting language data by identifying key features and drawing conclusions based on that data. So, I would suggest that, the textbook covers this. I used the Cambridge University Press textbook, the blue one, but I don't know if the Collins one should cover this, but also past papers. Lots of that in past papers. Analyzing transcriptions of language spoken by children. So practice transcribing and analyzing spoken language data by identifying key features and patterns in the language usage of children. So I don't think students should major on this, but it might be a good exercise to once or twice practice transcribing actual conversations. So record a conversation with a child, obviously get the child's permission, but most of them have siblings. Most of the students have siblings or something. But record the conversation and then transcribe the conversation, and then it might help to build the skill of reading transcriptions, because sometimes it can be challenging to read transcriptions. But definitely don't major on it. It might be a waste of time if you do it too much. Exploring the role of English as a global language. Research and learn about the history and current status of English. So here, curiosity is important as a global language. Explore the cultural and economic implications of English's status as a global language. Exploring how language allows us to communicate our sense of self and construct social identities. Reflect on how your own language use reflects your identity and the identities of those around you. So there are a few exercises in the textbook that explore this. Also, these past papers, Nick is linking, thanks Nick, is pasting links to practice papers. Reflect on how your own language use reflects your identity and identities of those around you. Research and learn about relevant theories and how they can be applied to understanding language and identity. So the vocab list I'll send out will also have language, will also have identity theories and things like that. The AS and A-level course can be very intense, and many people struggle to provide the support for their children need at this stage. If you find yourself needing resources to help them, feel free to reach out to me and I will link you to whatever I have that might suit your needs. Okay, let's look at our questions. Okay, Zoe said that IGCSE success really helped them to refine their skills. So, yes, I use IGCSE success all the time. If I teach them something and they still aren't getting it, I link them to an IGCSE success video. It's really helpful. It's amazing. Let's check what other questions we have. Okay, do you have a nice checklist to use as a guideline when analyzing literature, please? I do. Okay, so I've got a checklist. I've got like an outline that you could maybe use for analyzing literature, so poetry and fiction. In terms of your IGCSE and AS exam, there will be non-fiction literature. And in terms of a checklist, I'll link you to ClickPo and Gasp. They're great. They provide some kind of outline. I'm just always nervous with very formulaic approaches because students who use a very formulaic approach often don't do well. So if you start with a formulaic approach, that's cool, but it needs to progress from there. So they need to eventually not need the checklist anymore. And they need to be able to really look at the nuance, because checklists don't really identify nuance in a specific text. And that is where the superb text analysis is, in identifying the nuance and the really interacting with the text. In terms of textbook, I think... Okay, so in terms of textbook, I use the Cambridge University Press one. Let me just find a photo of it. Okay, this one's kind of expensive. Oof, very expensive on Takealot. I don't feel like it was always this expensive. But if you can find it cheaper somewhere, that's great. Okay, so this is just so that you have a picture of the book, and then let's just check which one. Let's just get a photo of the one I use for IG. Okay, and then in terms of IGCSE, I actually really like the Cambridge one, the Cambridge University Press one, and the Collins one. I know that some students like one more than the other, so maybe look at like a sample of the book and let your child take a look at it and see which works. Also, just if you're going to use a tutor, just check with your tutor what they're using. So you don't want to spend 1,500 rand on a book and then you get a tutor and then your tutor wants to use a different book. Yeah, that's not great. So for year 8 and 9 CUP books, do you like the checkpoint or lower secondary books, and what must one get in a... Okay, so generally, for the year 8 and 9, I do like the lower secondary one. I've used both, and I like them both, so it's a matter of preference. I would be more likely to get probably the checkpoint. But I don't know, it's just because textbooks are so expensive, it can really be a lot to get every book there is. So I would recommend just get the course book. If you're really struggling to market, get the teacher's guide. But really, it depends on your budget. It depends on what you're able to do. There is every child works differently. So, now, Nick, do you have a preference in terms of checkpoint or lower secondary? I know you don't generally teach year 8 and 9. Yeah. And in terms of skill builders, I would kind of go off-brand with skill builders. So I would look at what the students are struggling with specifically. I might even just ditch a textbook for skill builders and use something like IXL. But make sure that you are subscribed to the British one, to the UK version. I think it's .co.uk maybe, or maybe no, it's uk.ixl.com. There we go. I think that's right. So I think IXL is a great resource if you've got a specific skill that you want to work through. Thanks, Nick. You're amazing. And thanks, Ilza, for recommending EduWiz. I have seen them. I've never actually bought anything from them. I generally buy PDF versions of textbooks because otherwise I would have too many books. Well, I really do have too many books. Okay, does anyone else have any other questions? Okay, I see Tanya is responding here. Bala Kudu. Okay, let me just quickly paste that here into the chat. So that's what today's session was. Not so much, I didn't want to say this is what you have to do, because each family approaches it differently. Some people need more support, some people need less support.